Let's talk about air cleaners and intake pipe designs. Let's do it. All right, guys, welcome back to another Baines Basics. Today I want to talk about air cleaner and intake piping because I've really learned some hard lessons over the years. I thought I'd share some of them. But before I start, again, I want to thank everyone in the comments or all our followers and everything like that. Really good engagement and thanks for sharing where you're from and your name. It makes it really easy to reply. So later on, we've got some more questions and answer videos come up so I can put your comment up and we can break down what you're talking about and I can explain it a little better. And it feels a bit more personable that I know your name and I can say, well, Bob or this or that. So it makes it easy. So today I wanted to talk about air cleaner and piping because I've learned some hard lessons there, so I thought I'd share them. We've got a project I'm helping Shawnee with, another one we've been doing for a while. I think he's been building this car for about 4 or 5 years. We did a 6-litre LS for it about 3 or 4 years ago. One of my dual plane planums on it, dual plenum, sorry. So I wanted a bit of extra runner length and I wanted a straight shot because I wanted to make as much power and torque as I can. Not so much power, but more torque. I want to try and get this an even engine. You know, if it makes 525, 550, I want to try and get the foot-pounds up there just as high as we possibly can. Being that it's a circuit car and it's going to be a heavy car. It's not a super light car. I'll show you some pictures of it. And it's just basically a VE that he's building as a, like a V8 supercar type thing for him to practice, because we've actually started a project with him probably about a decade ago, full chassis thing with a R5H7 NASCAR engine. We're pulling a bit of RPM out, putting some boost around 1400 horsepower we'll be putting into this thing. And I've done a custom intake on that, and we'll be doing a little bit of work with the engine. We're doing a closed deck conversion. There's quite a few things going on with that, but that's sort of on hold now because he's doing this Commodore one. Now we've just done the air intake for it. So I wanted to talk about air speeds in the intake and why we're not going with an OTR on this one. A couple of the dyno tests when you get into OTRs, a lot of them are dynoed without an air cleaner. When you put an air cleaner in, depending on which one you do look at, the surface area of a panel filter is really restrictive. So we're doing a twin cleaner setup. I've done these before on cup cars and stuff like that with really good results. And like I said, I made some big mistakes in the earlier days with this and really got slapped in the ass on the dyno with, fancy intakes and not understanding the airspeed or the restriction that I was creating with tight radius bends and stuff like that. Something that looks really good, but you put it on the dyno, I think something like this, we lost 35 horsepower. So I thought it'd go down because about probably 18 years ago, I built a calculator for this reason, more so to do with the air cleaner element size, and it really shows why cones are better than paneled filters. So what we did was we basically tested a square inch of paper and not pulled out as it is, right, the waffle. So forget the surface area. We tested what I think we end up doing 2 or 3 square inches and then divided it. But anyway, I did paper, foam, and the K&N WOTC, which they seem to have the least amount of pressure drop for obvious reasons. So I end up building a calculator that would calculate the minimal required surface area of your air cleaner. And Sean had a couple of questions about this. Why don't we want a single duct? And it's pretty much leads me into this and the airspeed, and also feeds into what we were talking about as far as throttle body airspeeds, 200 to 150 feet per second. Well, once we put that in a bend, and I think even Nelson Racing, he put a bell mouth on the throttle body and showed good gains just with the bell mouth, because we're not tearing over a straight edge. But these bends, and I think the ratio is like D3. I'll have to do a video on this, but there's a certain point in a radial bend that you can get to that it costs you minimal horsepower. But all these tight radius bends where you've got a 4-inch pipe, where the inside radius is like an inch and a half, they create massive amounts of restriction and turbulence in the pipe, even at 150 feet per second. So I'll just show you what we've built here. So this is a twin entry. So we've reduced the airspeed straight away by half. So now we're down to basically 75 feet per second. So we've reduced our turbulence by half straight away. And air under 100 feet per second really acts more like a non-compressible fluid. So we're going to get really good flow into the throttle body here. And here's some pictures of it on the car. So we're going to run twin cones. I think they're going to be about 5 inches long by about 6 inches round. So more than enough filter. So I'm putting almost 1,000 horsepower worth of filter on this engine just because I don't want any pressure drop at all. I want no restriction in the inlet. And we see this now with a lot of the supercharged cars. So here's a great example. I think this is some of the new Mustangs or something like that. They're actually having to go to twin boxes because they're restricted to obviously a panel filter, and the filters are creating so much pressure drop. But back to this, my lessons were these radius bends. Obviously, the best. The best would be like OTR or something like that, a straight, here. But the biggest drama with a lot of them is the filter area. I never knew until I dug into some of the testing that a lot of the OTRs are actually dynoed without an air cleaner. You put the air cleaner in, you could be losing 10, 15 horsepower. Again, depends on the brand. Some are a lot bigger and go right down, but a lot of the cheaper ones, they have a tiny little filter in them. And once you actually do the size and ratio, most of the filters aren't even good for 450, 500 horsepower. And if you've got a decent 600 horsepower LS, you want it to breathe. So, but there's other things we can do. Is obviously a better radius pipe like that to an airbox. That would be a lot better. But as you know, with the radiator in front of it, it makes it really hard on the LS. So hence why we've done a dual entry to try and help this. But this is basically what's going to happen. Air is going to try and take a straight line into that. So we're going to have dead area and turbulence in here, same in this corner, same in that corner, and it's going to overshoot the throttle body, and we're going to, reduce the size of the throttle body as well, or its, dynamic size. So as airspeed increases, down low it'll be fine. As we start to rev up, you'll find that the dyno will actually drop off, right? The airspeed starts to choke it a little bit. Where if we had an OTR with no filter, we might extend the horsepower a little bit more and even make a little bit more up top. But yeah. So I'll demo the calculator now, and we'll just go through a couple of numbers and I'll show you what I did. Let's do it. All right, so we're in the Einstein app, and we'll just go to gold calculators. Okay, and it's the first one there, the air cleaner app. So as I was talking about, we did pressure drop tests on different elements. So we have our K&N pleated, paper, and foam, and they're actually in horsepower rating as well. So the K&N does the best, the paper is second, the foam is the worst. But what I was talking about was, let's say we have a standard paper filter and we have a 12-inch by 8-inch cleaner. So a box cleaner, that gives us a filter area of 96 square inches, a maximum flow potential of 475 CFM and about 320 to 316 horsepower. That's before we get to pressure drop. And I know people will be going, oh, but I made 400 horsepower with my factory airbox. So that's not to say you can't make horsepower. It's just as we make that horsepower, your losses become greater. So let's say, you make an extra 100 horsepower, increasing that pressure drop. Well, it might have robbed you 15 horsepower now. And then we make 200 horsepower. Now it might rob you 45 horsepower. So basically, and I'll show you what I talked about as far as, let's go to a K&N. So straight away you can see the K&N takes it up to 585 CFM and almost 400 horsepower. But as I was talking about, why I like to go to a cylinder is because it'll have the same 2D, if you look over the top of a pod filter, it'll have the same area looking down at it, but we have that three-dimensional aspect now. So if we go to a cylinder and we go 12 by 8 and hit calculate, now we've got a air cleaner that can flow 1800 CFM and 1200 horsepower. Obviously, we're not putting ones that big on this one. They're going to be about 6 inches long by 5 inch, I think, in diameter. So that will get us roughly 378 horsepower. So straight away you can see there that I'm going to need 2. This is why I've done a twin air intake, obviously to reduce the airspeed, to reduce the turbulence, and reduce how much those tight radiuses rob the engine. Hence, I've gone 2 and split it. And I've doubled the air cleaner. So I have basically over, 700 horsepower worth of air cleaner. And like I said, again, you can push air cleaners past that point, especially with turbo cars. You'll see them nearly suck themselves through the turbo when they're too small. You're creating that much pressure drop. But it's not advisable. And again, if you want to make the most horsepower out of any setup, these are the little tricks that it takes, right? And like I said, you're seeing that now in some of the OEM stuff with twin airboxes and stuff. But all right, let's get back to the board. All right, guys, so that demos the calculator. And as I said, I sort of went into this long time ago because, I built something fancy, it cost me horsepower, and I needed to know why. So there was 2 aspects there. Obviously, was the panel and the shape of the intake. So again, try and use bigger radiuses where you can. And now you're actually seeing, which is really smart, I'm seeing this with a lot of guys that get into 3D printing who understand a little bit of airflow, and also guys OEM. So I think you remember we're talking about different shapes, how a mandrel isn't optimal to airflow simply due to its shape. So you're seeing OEM now introduce this sort of shape on the short side. So they'll do a little duct where they have a really tight section and it's not round anymore. So they'll increase this. Obviously, it's much bigger, but you'll see that this area here is much wider than the far side, and that's to increase velocity here and slow velocity there. Actually going the other way, but same. And I'm seeing some really smart guys in the 3D printing game now, and they're getting into this sort of stuff, and they're analyzing it through CFD, because CFD is very good for that sort of stuff if you understand what to input in it, because all this induction stuff is pretty much steady state flow. So you can use CFD to develop it